August 2nd, and as you can see, Bitcoin is still following exactly the path we outlined yesterday. We said it was going to approach the 64,000 zone, and during the following week, that is this week that's about to start, today is Sunday, August 2nd, and what we're going to see is Bitcoin comfortably staying in this lower half of the channel, meaning between 60 and 64,000. We're going to do, like on other days, a forecast of Bitcoin's movement, both in the long term and then for the week ahead, which is what interests us most in these kinds of videos. And we'll also point out those special conditions that will make it easier for you to enter intraday or scalping trades, giving you a better chance to win. Without further ado, let's take a look at the Bitcoin price analysis. As you've already seen, we've been following it for a long time, doing a really solid analysis and making very accurate forecasts. I'm Michael Vasquez, and after 15 years in professional trading, I've realized that the only thing that works, indicators don't work, isolated candlestick patterns don't work, or any patterns you might look for, to put it that way. What really works is figuring out what those who are trying to trick you are doing. And it's always the big players and institutions trying to trick you. In other words, very small groups of people, but with a lot of money in any market, in this case, Bitcoin. What they do is manipulate both the indicators and the price movement so that you end up on the wrong side of the trade, opposite to where the price is actually going to move. What we do is simply look for those clues. Knowing that, we look for those clues using volume, because volume is something that can't hide. We look for them one by one, which is why I post updates every day, to try to keep us from being fooled, to spot those strategies, and that way we can enter trades in the best way possible, whether it's long-term, weekly, or intraday, and do some really good trading. Without further ado, let's get started with the analysis. You already know that the 4-hour chart is our headquarters, and whether you're trading long-term, intraday, or the one we really care about in these videos, the weekly, you always have to start with the 4-hour chart to set up supports, resistances, and in this move, the middle of the channel. I've already mentioned in other videos that this is super important. Support at 60,000, resistance at 68,000, and the middle of the channel at 64,000. As you can see, the level where the price has spent the most time since it entered this channel is the middle of the channel, 64,000. In other movements, we have seen that one of the two elements, that is support or resistance, was predominant, had more influence, but in this case, the one that dominates is the middle of the channel. There are so many combinations. Each movement, so to speak, even if it has a common structure, which I explained to you in my course, those Wyckoff structures, how to spot those patterns to enter in the best way. Although you can see those common patterns once the movement has already happened, when each one is developing, it's different, and you have to notice those nuances. You have to understand all those traps, those clues, to do really good trading. Without further ado, let's get into the Wyckoff phases, which, as I always explain in my course, but now we're looking at the long term, I'll explain them to you myself. We are in an accumulation phase and also in a downward trend. In other words, the institutions, the big players, what they're doing now is filling their coffers to sell later on. They're not in a hurry. It could be in 6 months or it could be in a year. There's no rush. In the long term, what they're doing is accumulating. They've already been filling those coffers for quite some time, almost 2 months now, so that later they can push the price up to 80 or 90 and then do a proper distribution. Because the previous distribution was mostly just to try to break patterns and trick people more than usual. And we only see about 15 days of distribution. What this tells us is that they already had their coffers filled here. They didn't unload them. They didn't fully cash out, only partially. Now, they're still accumulating, and we could say they have twice as much loaded up as would normally correspond to this length of accumulation. That's it. We have that in mind now. You already know it's trending downward, even though in the long run we might see Bitcoin at much higher values. We can already see that downward trend. You can see it here with each high being lower than the last until the most recent one, the last high we saw yesterday, which was much lower than the previous one, even breaking through the middle of the channel quite clearly. We could have expected, like I said, that the middle of the channel being so strong, the breakout would be calmer, more gradual, and since it was the weekend, it would linger here longer, just like we saw before. However, it broke through in a drastic way, tried to retest as usual, and now we'll keep watching this area. That's the forecast for the week, to see Bitcoin approaching 60,000. At first, it's unlikely that it will hit 60,000 during this upcoming week. In any case, we can't rule it out. There will be retests toward the 64 area, probably with lower highs each time, and we'll see this downward trend, just like we saw that upward trend before. Basically, the accumulation we're seeing in the long term is showing up when we zoom in on the 4-hour chart. That is, it goes up to 68, drops to 60, goes back to 68, drops to 60, and then back to 68. Both times it tried for 68, it fell quite a bit short, but we understand it's the same kind of movement. And you can see that even though the overall movement is clearly upward, there are these swings to try to capture as much liquidity as possible. Because what I'm telling you about the big players trying to trick retail traders, if the move went straight from here to here in one candle or in several candles, but all green in a row, it wouldn't fool anyone. What it has to do is go up, then suddenly look like it's going down, then up again, then sharply down. So retail traders always get into the move late because what they do is look for indicators. The indicator gives them the signal late, they enter, and then the big players do their thing and keep loading up again and again. Now still, for example, on any time frame, right now we're on the 4-hour chart, but you can see it at any time. From here, where it already started, when you look at it over time, it's a clear move downward. However, retail traders still thought it was going to go to break through 68,000, 70,000, and euphoria was starting to set in. What the big players do is play with that euphoria, because retail traders, individual people, don't have such a well-defined strategy, and they let themselves get carried away a lot by emotions. Two basic emotions are euphoria, when the price is moving in your direction. That doesn't mean it's always going up. It could also be going short and moving down. But just to make it easy to understand, when the movement is going up, retail traders get swept up, get filled with euphoria, keep buying, thinking the movement will keep going up, and at that moment, the big players push the price down. On the other hand, there's fear. Retail traders have a really good position, but they start to see a movement going against what they expected. Imagine you're a retail trader. You bought here because the signals were super clear. You bought really well, and you were expecting that move up to 68. Very well. So what the big players do is suddenly stop that movement and then reverse it. When it breaks 64, you think it'll never, ever reach 68 again. That it's going back to 60, 50, or straight to hell, and you sell. Then they buy and go right to the level you had predicted and your accurate analysis. That's why the big players play with that. They trigger or they launch or set off all those stop losses that are close to those positions and make their move very easily. Like I said, what we do is look for those general movements, that trend, those strategies, so the big players don't trick us. We have that forecast set for the week. I also wanted to mention that if you want to see the chart as simply as I do, you can see I hardly use any indicators. Volume is important though. Now I'm going to show it to you so you can see, but just the simple volume. I mean, the simpler it is, the better. I think that someone who basically has no knowledge of trading can follow any of the videos I make and understand what's behind the chart, because the chart is just a reflection of a reality that exists behind it. And what we want to see is that reality through the chart. Kind of like Plato's allegory, the cave, and things like that. But anyway, we've already set up that 4-hour forecast. With that volume coming in, we thought the weekend would be quieter. When it started, we saw a bit more volume come in overnight, but in general, the weekend won't see much activity until tonight, Sunday night, Spanish time. I was telling you about the course, but I got a bit distracted. I've left you a 50% discount in the link for this video. Now I'm going to tell you the best positions to enter for scalping or intraday trading. Let's remove the volume a bit so it's easier to see. Right now we're seeing a pretty clear rejection, and we'll see. Yesterday we saw that move up to try to reach 68. We see that pullback in the medium term. We already know that it's going to go down this week. However, we have to keep pullbacks in mind. We're right in a reaction zone. In my course, I tell you exactly how to look for them, and right now we're seeing that it might go up a bit. We always have to look for 3 elements. Wicks on Japanese candlesticks, meaning rejection wicks. This could be a rejection wick, Significant volume, meaning a volume spike in the time frame we're analyzing, and reaching an area of activity, three elements that indicate a move with a high chance of winning. The more you go with the main trend, the more chances you'll have. I mean, if the main move we've seen on the weekly chart is downward, and the 4-hour chart is also downward, it's more likely, or you'll have a better chance of winning if you go short. Of course, you can take advantage of upward pullbacks, but you'll have a better chance, or rather less risk, of getting stuck if you do it that way. Alright, we've completed the entire analysis. I also wanted to tell you that in the VIP Telegram group, which is where I share the 2 trades I make daily, there's a limit of 100 people. We're very close. Yesterday we reached 95, 96, something like that. I think today we'll hit that 100. Once we reach 100, I'll close VIP Telegram for those who are already in, and the only way to join, because I don't want to close it permanently, will be for those of you who sign up at mexc.com, the best exchange in my opinion, and make a deposit. But for now, it's open to everyone. Alright, I also wanted to tell you about the August challenge. The July challenge is already over, as is the June challenge. Now we're starting with a $500 account, and every day I make micro trades. Right now it's 15 because the account is small, and I always go with the trend. A lot of times it matches the trades I share in VIP Telegram, other times it doesn't, but what I always do is wait for a clear move. I don't make things too complicated. Usually, I get it done in just a few minutes. Sometimes it takes a little longer, but for example, in August we doubled it. We went from 500 to 1,092, so that's a profit of 592. Now we started again. I'll show you yesterday's trade, I'll show you the take profit. You can see it was $15, and now we've got the first profit of August. I'm going to raffle off, like I've done in previous months, whatever I make with those 500, whether it's 200, 300, or 500 like last month, among everyone who signs up at mexc.com and makes their first deposit. I'm Michael Vasquez, and this is Daily Bitcoin Analysis. Thank you so much for watching this video, even on a Sunday. Stay tuned, because tonight, the weekday routine starts up again. There will be movement in the Bitcoin chart, and tomorrow we'll analyze more clues. See you then.